Good morning. It's Monday, March 2nd, 2020, 9 a.m. This is the Muscatine County Board of Supervisors. I'd like to call the meeting to order. First item on the agenda is to review the agenda.
Move to approve.
I have a motion by Santos,
Second. Go ahead.
second by Scott. Any discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the same. Motion carries. Item number 3 is to receive comments from the public. Is there anyone here wishing to address the board on the issue that is not currently listed on the agenda? If so, step to the podium, state your name, address, and issue.
Name, Edward Askew, 2952 155th Street, Muscatine. And my issue, again, is mental health. And I am providing some clarification to statements that were made last Thursday at the Muscatine County Public Group meeting. So first one was, it was stated by people at the meeting, these are county employees, county supervisors and such, was that the mental health region, the Eastern Iowa Mental Health Region, has to go through additional steps for Muscatine to no longer be a member of that mental health region. So I contacted Jeff Beck, who is the current chair of the Eastern Iowa Mental Health Region from Scott County, and he pointed out to me is no, once the letter came in that was signed and sent by this Board of Supervisors last November, that was a done deal as of July 1. Now this is currently. Now it may get changed by DHS, but currently as of today, it's a done deal. And in fact, he pointed out, why else would Muscatine be looking to DHS to force a region to accept them if it wasn't a done deal? The second thing that was brought up was that DHS has informed the management group for the Eastern Iowa Mental Health Region that they shall, not should, but shall, later on I was told it was should, develop a budget for 5 counties. That would be Muscatine also. And what Mr. Beck told me was, get a hold of DHS because we're not aware of that. And then he went on to say, don't expect DHS to tell you anything. That was kind of a little chuckle from him. Last but not least, I'm going to point out that this Board of Supervisors could fix the problem right now. Put it on the agenda for the next time, draft a letter and send it to the Eastern Iowa Mental Health Region asking for readmittance, asked to be a member again. And then it goes through the processes of the other counties voting on you to be in there, and it's done. We don't have to wait for DHS to tell people what to do. This board could do it. Now, my suggestion is that this board put on the agenda from now on until it's completed a section on updates on what's happening with DHS and the mental health region. This needs to be done. It needs to be an agenda item. The residents of this county need to know what exactly is being done and what progress is being made. So, there you go.
Thank you. Anyone else have another item they'd like to comment on? Henry?
Good morning. Henry Marquard, 108 Eagle Watch Road, Muscatine. I'll talk also about the mental health issue. First of all, I wanted to thank Felicia Tappert and the other county board staff for their presentation on mental health issues last Thursday. The presentation, especially on the needs and use of the program, I think were very, very informative and very interesting. I'd also like to thank and acknowledge the large number of caregivers and family members of patients in the program for their participation. I think it was very informative and certainly very moving to listen to their comments during the meeting as well as in talking to many of them after the meeting. I did have 3 observations from that meeting to share with the board and members of the public who were not at that meeting. First of all, I mean, this is a crisis of the board's own making. with the letter of November 4th and subsequent acceptance of the withdrawal from the Eastern Iowa Board. Contrary to what was said at that meeting, no further steps are needed. Muscatine has withdrawn effective July 1st of this year, with significant harm possibly to the users of the program, their families, and in fact, the providers. At that meeting, it was also stated that we should assume that Muscatine will return to the Eastern Iowa region. However, unless the state has already provided the board with information to that effect, there is no reason to make this assumption. Again, we're given information from talking to members of the other board that Muscatine is of the Eastern Iowa Board is out, and that apparently the task or the methods being used now is to rely on the state of Iowa to place Muscatine in one of the mental health regions, be it CO, Eastern Iowa, the group that's centered in Johnson County. We don't know if the state will assign Muscatine to a region or what region it will assign. Having served as a senior member of the state of Iowa government, I'd caution that my experience is that when some government agency came to me and asked us, in this case the environmental agency, to solve their problem, often the solutions were effective, but not popular because they lacked the result of the negotiations of developing political consensus. The negotiation, in this case something like what the regions would solve. I do think it's odd that essentially by turning over to the bureaucrats in Des Moines that we're giving up some measure of our own self-government. Finally, what I thought was very interesting at Thursday's meeting, it was discussed and disclosed that the rural counties of Seal have in many cases less clinical resources than the Eastern Iowa district. Well, which isn't surprising because if you look at the Eastern Iowa district, especially in Scott County, Muscatine County, you have Robert Young here in Muscatine, Robert Young in Davenport, Robert Genesis in Davenport, and Vera French, all in nearby Scott County. While it's likely that comparable resources found in Seal would be in Burlington, Fort Madison, or Keokuk. And it would seem that we would be getting less for our money if in fact we had moved to Seal. Thank you for your patience.
Thank you. Anyone else have an item you wish to comment on? Oh, hold on. We have someone come up to the board here.
My name, pardon me. My name is Lorraine Rogers, 120 Cedar Street, Fruitland, Iowa. I am a nurse. I've been a nurse for over 30 years. And this is just my take of what I've seen with the healthcare system. Notice care kind of has a little bit of a very big question in my mind anymore. I worked in the emergency room. I have worked on med-surg. I've worked in critical care areas. I've worked down in the OR, and I have worked all over. And what I have noticed in the 30 years is that the health system has gone down dramatically. I watched them close institutions over the years for mental health for people, and then it was shoved under the rug. One by one they were closed, no place to go for these people. Now, all of a sudden, in our society, we have figured out that mental health is indeed a big deal. These people need support, they need people to talk to, and now everybody is confused by why there is not anybody to take care of these people. The truth of the matter is why would you want to go into a job where there isn't one when you get out? So that is why we don't have very many people in this world to take care of these mentally health people, because we have allowed our governments, both locally, state, nationally, take all this stuff away from the people. So I'm here to voice my opinion, and a lot of this stuff We need to change that. Somehow we need to change that, because mental health is very important for people. It allows them to function in a society. They need avenues and ways to learn how to cope and do things, and there needs to be people to teach them how to do that, how to deal with their problems, and we do not have any of that today.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Did I see somebody else?
Yeah.
Okay, here's a tough.
Yes, my name is David Hahn, and I live at 2178 231st Street, Muscatine. I was wondering if you would have a timeline of when they may start the construction on the repaving or whatever it is they're doing out there on 231st Street. When it would start, approximately ending time, which I know weather's gonna play a terrific part of that. The reason I'm asking is my grandson this winter asked me if he could have his wedding at my home on the 1st of August. It looks to me like it's gonna be right in the middle of it. So I was wondering if there was any idea of timelines where we can try to make, where we can make different arrangements, like a shuttle or something to get the people to the wedding. We understand there'll be quite a few.
Yeah, and I don't know, I think Keith's probably generally here. I would suggest we reach out to the county engineer. I know they did have the pre-construction meeting on that. I don't know yet whether there have been plans and schedules that have come back from that. I think that typically there's a pre-construction meeting, which, Keith, correct me if I'm
Well, I
wrong.
speak to that when my turn.
Okay, Keith will give a project update here with us today, and he'll go through that timeline for you.
Okay, I was wondering like, if they were gonna start, say, down by the Lutheran homes and come out.
Yeah.
If that would be the case, then they'd probably kind of past my place by that time.
Yeah, we understand the confusion, and I think that generally speaking, every week Keith will give an update on all the projects and where they are, and he's planning that. It's on the agenda today for him to go ahead and do that, and maybe you'll get your timing questions answered, and if not, certainly the county engineer is always available for those questions, and I think his staff does a great job of answering whatever they can. Some of that's in the contractor's control.
Okay, and then I have one other question. I understand that the county is looking for another property or whatever to put their maintenance shed on this, there on 231st and Funks Hill Road. And I was wondering, when that time comes, the way I understand, the road was abandoned many, many years ago, like, then the maintainer said, put it in. The easement from 1924 states that it's for a roadway only, public road, and not for a maintenance shed. I have talked to my attorney about it 8 or 9 years ago, which he's no longer an attorney anymore. But I do have some information at home that he gave me. And when it was surveyed, portions of it are indeed in that easement. And I was just wondering what the possibility is, what would they do with the building and such when they do get a new one? Whether that would possibly come back to the landowner, the way my attorney understood that's the way it should be, when an easement is made that's not used as what it was originally for. And so I'm just curious on that, because I'd sure hate to have some, say somebody come in there that nobody ever knows and end up in there, in that building, because it's so close to our property. And I think it would save the county some money if they would just leave it there. They wouldn't have to tear it down, they wouldn't have to cap the well, they wouldn't have to do anything with the septic system or anything. And I'm just inquiring of it because that's the way I understand it. It may be different.
Yeah, I think that question has come up a number of times, and it's been a big source of confusion with with people around on public rights of way, which is
Yeah.
generally what roads are on. And if we abandon or get rid of a right of way, the county has no claim to that land. It goes back from whence it came. So if it came from landowner, it goes back to the landowner. We don't, we're simply on a right of way is all we are. And so that's, an attorney might correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe that land would go back to the original landowner from whence it came, would be the process. As far as that specific maintenance shed, we haven't clarified or come up with any specific plans, but certainly we will do everything. There'll be a public meeting, we'll generally our agenda, we'll see when we're talking about those. We have been talking about our maintenance sheds, I will say that, and we're looking at project plans. But
Yeah.
those typically go a ways out. We have to find the funding for all those
Well, I
projects.
appreciate that, and one reason that I really never wanted to do anything or question anything about it in the past, because I feel I'm very fortunate to have it that close to me, because my snow gets cleaned off first.
Okay,
So I'm
very good.
never worried about it, I think, I have no problem if the county was to keep it there, but
Yeah,
I'm just trying to.
yeah, you wanna understand the
take care of
process,
myself,
yep,
What the process is, and what can be done,
yep,
because I know that I've always questioned it a little.
okay, very
Thank
good.
you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else that have comments? Okay, we'll go on to item number 4. I know we have a discussion with Brett and the crew from the Special Olympics this morning. I just wanted to take a brief moment to review the annual budget process in Muscatine County, because I think there's been some confusions about what it is and how our process works. So in December of every year, we kind of gather input from people on the process and set our calendar. In January of the year, usually it's about a 2 to 3 week process where this board holds meetings, and there'll be a published agenda every time. It'll talk about budget areas and when we're discussing what items, and that is our deliberation process. And we held that probably January, 7th or 8th, somewhere in there, through the end of January. We went through that process where we would deliberate line item by line item on our budgeted expenditures. So I'll talk about that. So that was typically, and that's very typical when we do it in January, we've done that. So then after that process and the board kind of settles in, we publish a property tax. There's a new law in the state of Iowa. I think this is the first year it had to be done. We did that a week and a half ago, where our intent to levy, so it'll show what we intend to levy for property taxes for the budget plan for a couple of the funds. And there was a public hearing on that, and I think that was last week or the week before. The next step where we're headed to in our budget process is we publish our budget. So you'll see today we have an action to publish the budget. So here is what we're, as I say, we're fixing to do, or what we're planning to do as far as a budget process. So here's the expenditures we see. Once we have that published, then we'll hold another public hearing. So you should see, we'll set it for publication, then we'll set a public hearing, and then we'll allow input on that once everybody's had time to see the line item detail of the budget and what happens. And then after that public hearing, then it goes on to, once we set the potential levy, we set the public hearing, we set the budget, that sets kind of the maximum property tax levy and the maximum budget. We can decrease the budget after that process. We can or cannot, I would say a typical year, we have very, very little feedback on the budget. So I'm happy to see everybody getting involved in the process and watching it, because that's how you come up with great budgets. But after that, then somewhere on or about the end of March, is that the date, Nancy, Sherry? The end of March, we must certify our county budget, and it must be balanced for a tax levy and a spend. So that's the process we're marching down in as we move forward. So I know there were a lot of concerns about Special Olympics, and they felt like they didn't get it. So the board had talked, and we've opened up a session today. And so I'd asked Brett if he would come down and just give the board a presentation on the budget. And then what I would like to do is after that, if there's other clarifications or anything any members of the public who would like to add, we'd open up the floor for anybody to make a 1 minute or so comment, just to keep the process moving, if that makes sense to everybody. Okay, so that's kind of the review of the budget process. So the next on the agenda, unless there's questions about the budget process in the county. Okay, the next, I feel a couple of things I wanted to make sure people were aware of. So in the budget process, we have approximately 27 different funds within the county that we operate in, but they're all fueled. I would say the fuel is the revenue, and it's property tax we're talking about only here. We're not talking about schools, we're not talking about city assessments. We have 5 levy classes, so there's 5 buckets of money, so to speak, that this board has control of. I will tell you right here that 4 of those 5, there are caps in place. So there's only so many dollars per thousand that we're allowed to levy by state statute. And then each fund, every bucket, that carves up, and so we may have like, there's only really one unrestricted fund, and that's the general basic fund, that we can pretty much spend whatever dollars this board elects. But that also has a cap on how many dollars per thousand we can do. I will tell you at the current budget, we currently this year are operating at that cap. And in our proposed budget, we will be at that cap as well. So that's part of it. There's also what we call restricted funds. So some of the areas of budget, some of the funds, and I think you've heard some talk about mental health. There would be a classic example. A mental health fund, we collect dollars for mental health in a levy, which we are capped to what we can collect, and we are only allowed to spend those dollars on mental health services. And there's also a list of those, and I think I would concur with Mr. Marquardt and ask you that was a great public meeting to have folks see exactly what your dollars are going for. So what services we are allowed to fund, and some we must fund, some we can fund if we have excess funds. So that's really all I wanted to talk about at the budget today. We got a good crowd. I'd like to make sure everybody knows how your government budgets and that process works. So if there's no other questions or comments on that, Brett, I'd ask you to maybe give an overview of the Special Olympics funding, or Jason, or I don't know who's doing that this morning.
Yeah, so my name is Brett Olson. I work at the YMCA. Obviously, the Y runs Special Olympics here in town. And so today, we appreciate you putting us on the agenda. We feel this is a very important issue to us, obviously, and to the community. So I brought Jason Miller. Jason runs Special Olympics. He's the program director. He's going to give an overview. Then we asked one athlete and one parent to kind of talk about what the program means to them. We'll all be brief. We know that you've got a long agenda. And we do appreciate your time. So I'm going to let Jason kind of give a little overview of Special Olympics.
Thank you for putting us on the agenda. My name is Jason Miller. I'm the Special Olympics Director here in Muscatine. Got a lot to cover, but I'll keep it very brief, and I'll give you the meat and potatoes. If you hand that to
Sure.
you.
Yeah, that'd be great.
So that'll give you an overview of our program, but really, we want to get to the heart of what Special Olympics is. Everybody knows that, hey, we're a sports program, but we're much more than that. I had a lot of people that wanted to talk, and unfortunately, we just don't have the time to bring everybody up. And so I asked a parent, asked an athlete to come, and we'll keep it brief as well. But I worked with our board, athletes, coaches, really to get a feel and an idea of what Special Olympics means to them. And so I'm just going to read this letter that was put together just to convey all their messages so we don't have to have everybody come. We represent a very small, vulnerable, and economically weak and yet community, and yet one that is so rich in spirit and strong at heart. This is a community of people who struggle every day for healthcare, for decent paying jobs, for friendships, for a chance to get on the playing field. These are people in our community who struggle the absolute hardest to make it, yet have done nothing wrong. This is a community that has to work 10 times as hard as everybody else and is always overlooked, yet rarely complains. This is their social outlet. This is their health, mental, and physical wellness is Special Olympics, and there's no other program like this in our community. If our athletes are healthier, they're not tapping into public health resources. If our athletes are employed, they're contributing to society and their employers. If our athletes teach tolerance and understanding, then violence and discrimination goes down. What we are doing and continue working to do, we're fighting bullying, fighting social exclusion, fighting low performance for underachieving youth and adults, fighting for decades for people with intellectual and developmental disabilities have been marginalized and excluded from schools, from communities, from family life, and still to this day are still unemployed, are 3 times more likely to be bullied, and are more likely to be poor. This is not the same program we had when funding started with the county. It's a good use of our dollars. We've expanded our sports programs, increased competition at the district and state level. The amount of athletes going out for sports have increased, and our participation rate has increased considerably. We've expanded our unified sports program where athletes are matched with anyone in the community to play on the same playing field. We have 13 sports, district competitions in those sports, along with programs to educate our athletes on healthy social behaviors, healthy eating habits. Wellness programs focus on physical fitness, cardio, and weight training. The Healthy Athletes Program provides health, dental, and vision screenings for those who cannot access this care. We partner with the Muscatine Community School District to put on a day of sports competition for our special little ones. This day of play integrates gen ed students with special ed students and gives them a chance to play with their friends, experience the joy of sports, power of play, and inclusion for all. Our athlete leadership program teaches athletes to write and deliver speeches, to advocate for themselves and for others. We work on the development of leadership skills which help our athletes build confidence and secure jobs in the workplace. Ultimately, our community is experiencing social and emotional learning. By partnering with our YMCA, we're teaching values such as character, perseverance, openness, trust, listening, and acceptance of others. We want our athletes to have pride in what they do and accomplish what they accomplish on and off the playing field, giving them a sense of self-worth, independence to secure and maintain a job, and uphold their God-given right to live healthy, free, and independent life with a community of people who accepts them for their different abilities. The big lesson here is our community is learning to respect the fact that everyone matters. Adam, you want to come up? And Tracy, if you want to come up too, talk to that.
Good morning, my name is Adam Winiger and I live here in Muscatine. I've been in Special Olympics for 8 years and a global messenger for 6 years. In February of 2019, my mom and I were asked by the Special Olympics Iowa to speak to our representative in Senate about Special Olympics in Washington, D.C. I'm in swimming, team basketball, team softball, track and field, soccer skills, and first time this year, flag football skills. Next year I'd like to try out a winter sport. I like to play all of these sports because I like to be with my friends. At practice, we laugh a lot and talk and also learn a sport. I get to travel to competition on a bus with my friends, which is always fun. If not for Special Olympics, I'll be on the computer watching YouTube videos all the time. If I couldn't do Special Olympics anymore, it will make me sad. Thank you for your time.
Hi, my name's Tracy Renninger. I'm also known as Adam's mom. And I want you to know how incredibly proud I am of this young man. When he was 12 and we started Special Olympics, he was on the computer all the time. He had no interest in peers whatsoever. And I talked and talked and talked, and I finally got him to go to a softball skills practice. And he decided he'd go to one practice. And so I rushed and I got the forms filled out in his physical, and he went to the one and he participated, but he watched the other athletes. Didn't really interact. And when he came off the field, he said he was done, and I did another thing, so I had to take pictures, you gotta come back. And so he did, and he participated and he watched, and he got into it, and we did basketball skills, and again, he just watched the other athletes. We did track and field, and we got him back around to softball, and he started to react to the other athlete. He would laugh with them, not interact with them, but laugh at what they were laughing at. We've added swimming and all the other sports, and now he's social. He has friends, he has a community that means something to me. He has a passion and a purpose. He couldn't wait to get here to speak to you about Special Olympics. And when Jason asked us to do the leadership and global messenger program up at the state office, learned how to give speeches, how to write speeches, how to present yourself. I'm a speech coach, you know. We got to work with athletes and programs around the state, and some of the older athletes, their stories will break your heart, what these older athletes have had to go through. I mean, I've been in tears many times listening to these athletes. And I'm blessed that Adam did not have that experience that they had, and that has a lot to do with Special Olympics, being out in the community and just being seen. And as part of the leadership, he spoke at fundraisers here in Muscatine, he spoke at a Polar Plunge in Coralville. He's participated in the Summer Games in Ames, speaking there in front of 3,000 people. He's done that twice, you know, and we've gone to Washington DC to advocate for Special Olympics. It's something, it was an amazing experience. I'm glad we got to do it. But what a resume for any 19-year-old that Adam is, you know, no less when he was diagnosed at 3, something I never knew was out there for him and even possible. And I think Special Olympics, and especially Jason and Tim and Shannon and Andrew, the coaches that we have, they see potential, they see what's in these athletes, and they give it to them. And they develop, they saw something in Adam, and now, I mean, wow, as a mom, I'm so proud. And so I'm thankful, and I want to thank the board for their help with this program.
I'd like to thank Adam. I know Adam. He used to wave at me every day at the high school. I was a bus driver, and that's how I met him. Every day I look for that smiling face. Thank you, Adam.
Kind of hard to top Adam's speech, but you know, from the Y perspective, we run Special Olympics, and it's not that we rent them space, it's that they're a YMCA program. If you go across the country, you won't find that at another Y. So it's pretty unique in Muscatine, and I think what we find from folks like you and folks in the community is that everybody wants us to collaborate. Well, the Y does that as well, if not better, than anybody else. We also have Big Brothers Big Sisters. If you go to another Y, you will not find one in the whole country that has both of those programs. They're all YMCA employees. So what that means is we're able to be efficient with funds and resources. If Jason's program was on their own, they would not thrive like they do today. But certainly that takes partners. And we've been in a partnership with the county from 2003. And obviously I don't think any of you were on the board back then, but the county used to run Special Olympics. If you go back in the olden days, county people asked the Y to take this program over. Now with that came the promise to fund the program at $35,000, and what it was a purchase of services, or purchase of hours and services through community services. Several years ago you guys cut that funding, but we continue to grow and expand that program, as Jason mentioned. So it's a first-rate program in Muscatine. It's the envy of programs in the state, and obviously we rely on that funding. So your funding is about 30% of that program, and I certainly know that people say, well, hey, it's $30,000, just go out and fundraise, which we can do. We'll end up doing that if we don't get put back in your budget. But you gotta realize that we already fundraise for Special Olympics. We fundraise for the Y, for scholarships, for people that can't afford memberships. We fundraise for youth and teen programs. We fundraise for family programs. We fundraise for Big Brothers Big Sisters. Last year we raised about $210,000 in fundraising, and the year before was $250,000. And so to add another $30,000, you know, to do that one time, yep, it would be very simple. I could easily raise $30,000 for this program. But what you're asking is for me and Jason to raise $30,000 every year. And if you dummy that down, that's 600 people that have to give us $50. Not once, but every year. And that's a little more challenging. So Jason is a one-man show who has grown this program. He's phenomenal at what he does. You talk to athletes and parents, they love the guy. We love him at the Y. If he spends all his time fundraising, then he's not as effective as a program. And so it's a challenge for us if this goes away. Obviously, we feel this is a vital program to Muscatine. And then the last thing I'll say is I realize that people don't feel like this is a county thing to fund, or a vital or core service, as you would call it. And other counties don't fund their Special Olympics, which I know is true. But I look at it as if we want to be average or we want to be like everybody else. I want to live in a county where, I'm going to use my friend Dick Vetter as an example. Dick is a legend in this town. I'm assuming that all 5 of you know who Dickie Vetter is. Dickie might be the most popular person in Muscatine. And I look back to when his parents helped start this program and what it's done for his life, to be an active member of the society, to live here, to be fully employed. When they go to competitions, it's like taking LeBron James. Everybody wants to see Dickie V and take a picture. And so what I want to see is that, you know, guys like Adam or Corey, that they have those same opportunities. And I'm afraid that if funding goes away, those opportunities become limited. So obviously you guys have tough choices to make, and we certainly appreciate you putting us on the agenda and giving us the opportunity to speak. So we thank you for your time.
Thank you, Brad. Any board members have any questions, or do you have other people to speak?
I guess one of the things that I was just wondering, in your fundraising that you do, is that a yearly thing that you've done over the last 20 years since the program? And
Yeah, so we've always, if you look at, and it's not exactly third, but we do fundraising, and last year I think Special Olympics was $45,000 worth of fundraising and special events. Obviously the Y contributes a decent amount. So when you buy a Y membership, Santos is a Y member guy. So when he writes me a check, a little bit of that goes to Special Olympics, and a little bit goes to Big Brothers Big Sisters, and a little bit goes to the bill, it goes to everything. So every member gives something to Special Olympics in that sense.
I know that was one of our concerns, was not knowing where the funds go, how the funds are distributed. And I appreciate you being able to come up and share a little bit with us. It's something that I
Yeah,
know.
so Jason's doesn't, I mean, he doesn't have a huge budget, obviously, it's give or take $100,000. Now, the bulk of that is Jason. Now, he doesn't get paid $100,000 by any means. He's underpaid, he does a phenomenal job. But, you know, salaries, benefits, those kind of things add up. And then with the athletes, there's a lot of competitions. Travel is a big cost, uniforms. But again, if they weren't at the Y, they wouldn't have the facilities and the resources. Jason doesn't worry about the copy machine, he doesn't worry about the computer. He would have to worry about that if he had a little storefront somewhere else. And so I think what you gotta realize is we've made this program so efficient by having it at the YMCA.
How many Special Olympic athletes do you have?
We have 173 currently.
173. Wow.
79. Okay.
Tell me your top 3 fundraising events that you do and the kind of money you raise out of.
Sure, so, one of the big fundraisers that we do is we work with the Muscatine County Sheriff's Department, our torch run. They raised about, last year they raised over $10,000, which was a big home run. The second one, we worked with the Knights of Columbus to do our Tootsie Roll Drive. The third big one is our Over the Edge event, which we just started a couple years ago. That's probably our big one. That one last year raised about 20-ish, yeah. And again, we work with Big Brothers Big Sisters and the YMCA to do the program.
Yeah, I know the sheriff, he reached out to me, and, you know, he understands everybody's plight, and he said, you know, trust me, he said, we've always, the deputies, and this is all great county employees, on their own time, on their own dollar. He said they will redouble their efforts, they understand the issues, and they will get it done, so that's good, and it's a good, solid program. I always think about funding, you know, that's kind of where I am and what we're allowed to do, where we can find dollars. Do we means test athletes on this? Is there any of that in this process? Or an athlete comes in and any athlete that signs up is funded through your program?
So currently how the reimbursement works is that we have 23 people on that. And that's been the same 23 that we've had since 2003. I think there were more of that, but some people have passed away, some people have no longer get that service. We've never added to that, but we have 173 athletes that could. But we've easily hit that reimbursement every year just based on those 23 athletes.
So when Mike moved this over to a service provider process, pay for service rather than grant funding, which is something that quite frankly, when most of our funding streams we've been required to do over the years. There's checks and balances there. He basically identified 23 athletes that they were paying on a service basis, but doing a contribution, much like many of the other funding streams, okay?
Yep.
All right.
I've seen on Facebook that the sheriff's department's really pushing to help fund. It's really great that our sheriff's department's willing to get out there and fight.
Yeah.
Unless there's any other comments to be made, I'd like to make a motion to amend the budget.
We really can't do that at this, Doug. We don't have it for action, and we have to go through the public hearing and the deliberation process to take a motion on the budget. Yeah, we'll have the time to work on the budget as we go forward. Today, it's just an informational opportunity. We'll have an opportunity after our, that we have to give all affected people an opportunity to comment on budget impacts, and then we'll have that opportunity after that public hearing is set, have the public hearing. If other people have input, then we'll want to go ahead and we can we'll have a deliberation at that time, whatever changes or modifications we will. We do know we have a few issues we'll have to address off of what we've already published, so there will be some changes coming this year probably. We have to get it published, so.
We have a few ideas as well, and if we can work with you on just to sit down, talk, and discuss those ideas that we have, I think it would be very helpful.
Yeah, I think that's, as we talked before, that, our Director of Community Services, and I know Cheryl with, in her Vision 2020, and Jim Hayes out at Crossroads, this is a whole, whether you like it or not, kind of the mandates around funding in a lot of these areas are getting more and more challenging, and I think as a community, we've always valued these providers in our community. They've done a fantastic job. We can all talk philosophically, whether we like it or not, but our hands get tied at the local level many times. But I think that's where, if we sit down together as community partners and we figure out what can we do, how can we do it, and be creative and try to find ways. And if we've challenged staff with that to talk about, how do we sit down and do that? And I have great confidence we'll get something done.
So appreciate you working on it.
Jason and Brett, I'm assuming everybody here is donated, but for folks out there who are watching who may want to become involved, may want to donate, what's the easiest way to do that?
So you can reach out to us at the YMCA. It's nice that we're housed there. So you can make a personal donation either to the YMCA or to Special Olympics.
Can they do that from your website?
You can. Yep, they go online and donate right there and they can select Special Olympics.
The
if they want
YMCA
specifically.
website, yep.
I'd love to give that out right now. Do you know what
So it's just muscatiney.org, and then there's a couple donate buttons.
Awesome.
So it's pretty
Muscatiney.org.
easy.
Great.
Pretty easy to find. We'll always take a donation.
Always will.
So Brad or Jason, what I know that we had discussed that normally for funds and other organizations that we look at trying to assist in the community, sometimes we'll have a kind of a little fund balance sheet of what, how many touches we're doing in the community, how we're getting fundraising events that you're doing, how your sustainability is of what you're doing. It helps us kind of see from a bigger picture of what you're doing. And one of the things that, again, I know this is a great program that you're doing, but if we can't see that, we just assume certain things. And I know there may have been a lack of communication from either side. It doesn't matter. I think it's a matter of what we do to move forward. And how can we see some of those things? We can see a little bit of those numbers. And it's easier in some of those decision-making positions where we get, pushed up against the wall to try to figure out how we can, manage the funds that we have and be good stewards of what we're doing and the best decisions. But I think if moving forward, that would be helpful for us future-wise, so we can at least see that. And I know that, as we're asking for organizations to raise funds and how they're operating, to me, those are big impacts to helping those decisions be made for us to see where the funds are going and what you guys are doing to help the community as well too. So I appreciate your time and your guys' discussion. I know there's many stories like yours as well, so thank you.
Thanks, everybody. Anybody else that I wanted to open the floor up to to people that might want to comment on, make a comment. I'd ask you to keep the comments fairly brief so we can keep her moving along today, but if you want to add anything, please feel free. Yes.
I'm gonna apologize, I'm very soft-hearted. I'm the widow of Ken Rogers. I don't know, perhaps many of you people here may know and remember Ken. Ken used to work for the Sheriff's Department many years ago. He worked under Ron Hazen. He was instrumental in starting the Special Olympics. He went forward and developed the programs for the law enforcement torch run. Ken had a gift. He could raise money and get people out of money like I have no other. He could never ever understand. He could raise in excess of $10,000 completely by himself and could never ever understand why nobody else could do that. There is a law enforcement run t-shirt that all these guys get every single year. Muscatine County was in the top 5 and usually number 1, 2, or 3 for many years, because Kenny was instrumental in donating himself, going door to door. And sometimes I think that maybe people gave him money just to get rid of him. I don't know, but that could have been the case, because Ken was kind of a force to be reckoned with sometimes, as any of you may know if you interacted with him. But he also was a very kind-hearted man, sometimes a little bit overprotective for the ones that he really loved and very hard on them at times, but it was for their own protection. He did that for a lot of years, and then when he left the Sheriff's Department, somebody else took it over. He was on the board, the local board here in Muscatine with the betters and stuff. I was fortunate enough to go with him. They had law enforcement conferences and stuff that were from cops all over the world. And the Special Olympics program on the state level, to the deputies or whoever was in law enforcement for that, whoever raised the most money or was in the top of the state, they paid for them to go. He went to many different places. I was fortunate enough to go with him on the one trip to Alaska. He had a room that was paid for and stuff, so I just hitched a ride, paid for my plane fare, paid for my own stuff, because obviously I had someplace to stay. And that was a great experience. I was up there, and at the one dinner that we paid to, there was a gentleman from the Royal Hong Kong Police. And of course, they ask where you're from, and you just say Iowa. And this gentleman said, Iowa? I know Iowa. I know Muscatine, Iowa. His brother had worked for Band-Aid. So this world is really quite small. And if you have ever been to the summer games or been to any of their events, I encourage you to go, because they treat each other and how we should treat everybody else in the world as well. They give everybody a very powerful lesson on what is really important.
Thank you. Anyone else care to make a comment?
Good morning, just real quick. Good morning to the board, Nathan, and Scott. I'm Betsy Evans. I live in Columbus, the other side of Columbus Junction, 13585 County Road W66. I volunteer in Eliza County. I volunteer in Muscatine County. I volunteer through the Writing for Success program. It's a rehabilitation program for our mentally and physically disabled, as well as our community of citizens with cognitive disorders. I've been with this program probably 4 or 5 years, and I'm astonished at the need, just in our little program. I've met a lot of the athletes, and they're terrific people, and our community needs this funding. We'd like for you to keep the Muscatine County Board of Supervisors' name in their bucket of budgets. Thank you.
Anyone else care to comment? Okay, seeing no one else. We'll move on our agenda. The next item are items with Michael Nolan of Horizon Architecture. First item is discussion of possible action to affirm a change order 7R for Muscatine Maintenance Facility Project in the amount of $853.45.
Good morning, how everybody?
Morning,
Everybody
Mike.
not here to see me, so.
He has that effect.
So just a couple of small change orders to discuss this morning. So just to give a little background on the process, last time we had a smaller change order and there was some concern about some of the supervision charges. I've had some in-depth discussions with the contractor on that. Even though it is certainly within the purview of the contract, that's what they're to do, we talked about, what is probably the better thing to do as far as we've already paid for supervision, we have a site supervisor, and they agreed that it probably wasn't the best thing to put the hours of supervision on. So what you'll see is we've gone back and forth on these for a couple of weeks, and I think we've arrived at what is a fair solution, particularly with subcontracted work, where they're not putting their specific labor on it. So you'll see with these two, it's just what we're used to seeing now. It's just a line item to work with a minor, basically the 15% just for the overhead and profit for the general contractor. So that being said, so this is the 7R is, if you look at the side of the building along the Walnut Street side where the ramp was coming down, what we did is once the ramp was in place, we had an option to either have exposed concrete wall there or to add masonry on there. It was a recommendation by the contractor as they were getting into that. I thought that was a fantastic idea. So we had that installed. So now what you'll see is that ramp goes down, you'll see the masonry will continue to the bottom, so you won't have a transition from the masonry. Fairly minor charge, so $728 plus the contractor's markup, so a total of $836.45 is going on there.
Move to approve.
So I have a motion by Santos. Second. Second by Scott. Any discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the same. Motion carries. Item B is discussion of possible action to affirm change order 8R for the Muscatine Maintenance Facility Project in the amount of $920.28.
That is a trade name, so if anybody's looking at that, that's not just.
what I had to ask.
Okay, so when we got the down rod that comes with the fan is a 24-inch rod. When we got it and looked at the mounting arrangement on the ceiling and where the likelihood of that, the clearance to the end of the tip of the fan blade, it was under the manufacturer's recommended clearance of 24 inches, so we recommended let's drop that down. Those will start to move a little bit, so rather than beating up the fan or the ceiling, the move to the 3-foot rod seemed to be a reasonable approach, so that's what happened here.
Shake that big ass fan.
You hadn't heard those before? They're
Those-
used for not lots.
Those
in
are a
big
big manufacturing
facilities.
name.
The ones in the courthouse are.
Yeah.
Those are
Yeah.
normal.
What are we dealing with here?
These are two fans, so these were two down rods. These are, yeah, they're pretty stout products.
I understand.
They're pretty big.
I would hope, yeah.
I understand exactly what they are. Thank you.
Okay.
Move to approve.
I have a motion by Nathan,
Second.
second by Santos. Any further discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the same. Motion carries. Anything else, Mike?
So just a quick update, I'm gonna take a run over right now. I know they're pushing hard to get the interior liner panel finished up so we can get the rest of the interior electric work. Looks like we're starting to get the exterior siding. That's probably a little behind where we wanted it to be, but it's the same contractors. We had them focus on the interior work for now. You'll see the rest of the exterior siding and the roof start to catch up pretty quickly after that. Everything is looking good, the weather's been fantastic, so we've had, I'm not saying anything about the weather, it's warm this week, and we'll just leave it at that. So that is all going well. We can anticipate that we will have one more change. The one thing we tried to do was with the handicap access ramp that we added onto the side of the building. We were hoping we'd be able to train the grade to make that a 1 to 20 ramp, so that it wouldn't technically be a ramp. When we got the final grades of the sidewalk and everything set, it just doesn't look like it's gonna be feasible, so we'll have to add some handrails on the edge of that. So you can expect to see that sometime in the next couple of weeks. We'll still be anticipating the changes for the subgrade changes on there, and other than that, we're staying pretty well on. We've been able to, do a little horse trading here and there to keep things well within budget. At this point, we're at about 2% on a $1.3 million project, so I'm feeling pretty good about that.
Mike, some of the civil work on the parking and the sidewalk, when do they anticipate beginning that?
I'll let you know on that. I know that they were gonna ask Needham is gonna be the site work contractor, if they wanna get started early on that. I would expect to see that happen sometime in the next couple of weeks. On the schedule, it was pushed out a little bit later, just based off of weather, but if we have availability, things are looking good and we don't have the frost, we'll probably proceed with that.
It's primarily just paving, all the underground work was already done and all that, most of the,
We still have to tap into the water, so we're working with them,
Still the water
on that right now. The original has a tap off of Fifth Street, the city wanted us to come and request to close the street down, so we're gonna try and change that and come off of Walnut, assuming everything is okay there, which we don't see any issues, that'll allow us to proceed with that tap work. I would expect to see that happening in the next couple of weeks.
okay.
So that, again, is clicking along. We are into probably about 50 to 75% design on the addition for the deputies' quarters. I'm gonna try and get that into site plan review next week, if we can get that far enough along. Mechanical and electrical seems to be coming along. I'd like to sit down with the sheriff's department and just run through everything one more time, since we expanded the scope on that project a little bit, and just, run through things there. And the roof project will be shortly thereafter, so.
The jail roof?
Yes. Keep them busy, so if I'm not up here, that's a good thing, right?
Right.
Yep. Any other questions for Mike, or?
I just wanna say that project's coming along so nicely, and done an excellent job, I really appreciate it.
Thank you, sir. I appreciate it. I'm really excited to see how it's coming together. And again, I really want to be hats off to Swanson. They're doing a great job. Their site supervisor, Dan Brown's been great to work with. So we really appreciate all the hard work they put in over there.
When could we tour the facility?
At any time you'd like to do that, let me know. I'll get you in touch with Dan, and we can set up a time to do that.
Great.
Well, once you're closer to maybe 75, 85% done, maybe it'd be good.
Absolutely.
I'd like to see it once the civil work is done as well, too.
Definitely.
So if it's a couple weeks, that's
See how
fine.
big a mess it is on the inside.
Well,
so.
just, we understand it'd be still under construction. I'd like to.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Mike, appreciate you fighting back on those costs too. Thank you very much.
It was a good conversation to have.
Sure.
Okay,
All right.
thanks much, Mike.
Thanks, guys.
Okay, item number 7 is discussion and possible action to approve and authorize the chair to execute a grant and aid agreement between the State Historical Society of Iowa and Muscatine County in the amount of $9,750 for reconnaissance and intensive survey work of county schools and county church properties and sites in Muscatine County with Historic Preservation Commission member Lynn Pruitt. I don't see Lynn, but I see Bill.
See a bigger guy, don't you?
Yeah, I see Bill. So,
Somebody your size or. Okay, I'm Bill Kohler, and I'm recently the chair of the commission. Pleased to be here today. I'm not here to talk about public health, although that's probably the front page of the paper, and we're gonna keep that in front of people here for the best people of the county and for the best health care. I'm not here to talk about that. 2011, you established this commission. A lot has happened. I'd say it's one of the really positive things that's happened in Muscatine County that's really great. And a lot of people are noticing when we go to the state of Iowa and say, we have a grant, they say, boy, you guys are really on top of it, you know what you're doing. 3 years ago, we did what they call a planning and preservation study for the county. Went to every township, every road in the county, every facility, every barn, whatever, that looked to be old. And it's cataloged. It's now on the county website. Anybody can look at it. A lot of things have happened since then. A lot of things have gone on the historic register, had not been before. The fairgrounds, the jail, a number of places. On March 9th, there's a public hearing down at the Pearl Mountain Museum for the fish hatchery. You may or may not have known that was a place for the prisoners of war, for Italian prisoners of war during World War II. And
I didn't know that one.
it's, whoa, boy, got some good education here today. This is great stuff to keep. This is, I'm the last class of Maple Grove School. Does anybody know where Maple Grove School is? Who's in the district out here by Sweetland, Pleasant Prairie?
Scott.
Oh, Scott. I'm the last class, 1956 graduate of Maple Grove School. It's still standing. It's a house today.
Yeah,
But
I can't
people
name
do
them,
not-
but my sister can.
Oh, okay. Yeah, well, Schmitz, Paces, all those people went to school there. Anyway, if we don't know where these places are in the county, old churches, one-room schools, there's only a couple of them left. One at West Liberty on the Heritage and the Melpine School. But there's many other locations around the county, Lacey and so forth. So the Planning and Preservation study came up with, this is a good place to start. Let's save and locate these places while we can. Funds are available. We have a contract here ready to be approved by the state, back here for signature by appropriate leadership, and $9,750. Funding is available from our segment of our budget that you granted. Secondly, from the 120th Historic Bridge for the $4,750 for the balance. So all funded. It's a matter of you liking it, approving it, and we'll select a contractor. We got a list of contractors available to us from the state of Iowa. We'll select somebody to fall within the budget property, and we'll get this done. So, questions?
Are you looking at these sites, these school sites, are you looking at doing, obviously you're gonna figure out the points where they
Right.
set, and then what is gonna happen from that?
Well, we're gonna have a young man by the name of Eric Thurnis, I don't see him here, he's out in the hallway. He's gonna mark these sites, we're gonna have him on the Magic site, we're gonna have him also available other places for anybody. And eventually, we'd like to put up a sign someplace that says, this is the historic site of Maple Grove School, or the Lacey School, or wherever it is, or the old church that was here at one point in time. So, my children after me will know that this was a great location. You go out to where Tom Furlong lives, an old depot there, there's just for an example, there's school. You know, there's places like that. We'll mark these, they'll be available, you know, part of the history of Muscatine County. And, you know, that's gonna be one of the things that I have. Location, availability. It's, once we go, who's gonna remember?
Right. Yeah, I mean,
Nancy, do you have the contract to sign? Yeah, she's two places to sign on it.
I was curious, because I actually own one of these sites,
Oh, you do? School or a church?
school.
Which one?
Can't tell you the name of it, don't know. Don't know, right there, Sweeten Center. I
Okay.
can remember being there for 4-H or what have you when I was a kid, and I don't know what happened to the bell to it. But I had an opportunity to buy the bell to it one time, but I thought it was more money than I wanted to give. But, yeah,
So.
that's why I'm so curious about what they wanna do with these sites.
Yeah.
I don't
know if
even
you
know the
where they-
structure still exists.
Say again, please?
You've done the survey, so you know.
We've done
where-
the survey.
So if the structure is
Now
still
it's a
there.
matter of gathering facts about each of the sites, whatever's available remaining. And here's part of the problem. You know, I'm 77, you know, my dad would be 100 if he was here today, and he would remember much more than me. How many people between 77 and 100 have this information in their own head, or pictures, for crying out loud? Once we get the word out and say, when we started this planning and preservation, people came to us from a school over by Wayne Coryell. I can't remember the name of it now. They came to us and they had showed us photographs of people, and the teacher, you know, there's one teacher remaining that's alive from that school. It was the Swamp School. She's in a nursing home in Moline, Illinois. This came about when we started this study. You don't know what's gonna come out of the woods.
Yeah.
And so, and she had, in fact, she was the last teacher at that Swamp School, had the grade books, and we've got those on display at West Liberty. We had an open house, and people said, oh my God, I wish my dad got these poor grades, or he skipped school. I mean, it was just a trove of information that we would have never had we not done this study. So, you know, we're doing good things in the county. We're doing good things. Historic preservation is doing good things.
Yeah, I've been delighted with the work that commission has done. We've got a bunch of really committed, hardworking people
So I
that have done a
wanna
great
I wanna
job.
speak to that. I appreciate the board selecting great people who are interested and willing to work. Just don't sit on a board to say my name's on this, but are willing to get out there and work and drive the roads in the county and do whatever it takes to do. You see the names that are on the commission. These are hardworking people. You're exactly right, hardworking people. I'm proud to be with them. Same as with my Board of Health. Great people on the Board of Health.
Bill, I got a question. When the state gets this information and you guys actually find a state historical or a historical location here in Muscatine, does that ever get identified, for example, on like Google Maps? Or does
Yes.
that information get shared with them? So
Right.
somebody looks up a routing direction and say, oh, wow,
Yes.
here's what you just said, the old fish hat tree.
Yes.
Do you communicate that, or how does that get?
Yes, well, first beyond magic, that one thing, Google Maps, a number of the places that are obviously listed, National Historic Register
Yeah.
and so forth, all will be available, we'll have plenty of publication out there. On our,
But does
on
it
the county
done,
website.
is it done after this, or when does
It'll
that?
be done after this, yes.
Okay.
Yeah, be done after this. And then we wanna put, we gotta work out a standardized signing that works with, where do we put it on the property, on the county property, or in the state property, you gotta have, all these things gotta be worked out.
You know, the old Shiloh that was at the 170th and Tipton Road, North Tipton Road, is now a home.
Okay.
So part of the old school was used to build that home.
So the old,
That was Shiloh.
just north of the intersection of 6 and, or 22 and 70, there's a home on the left-hand side. There is the old school, which was along the old railroad right away there where the Nichols Auction Center was, that little town of Adams Station.
Yeah.
And there's a family that lives in there. And if you go north on, going on Mulberry North, just south of the T, if you look to the right-hand side, there's an old dilapidated one-room school. This guy moved in, sat there, and it just, you got to find, you gotta, when you drive all the roads in the county like we did, you find these treasure troves. Well, actually, the school that is at Heritage Park in West Liberty was on Dave Johnson's farm, and he had it as a tool shed. We found it, we built him a garage so he could give us the school. It's in excellent condition. State of Iowa gave us a special grant to redo the flooring and everything like it originally was. So, these things can be saved.
I know
Find them.
I know of a couple sites where the school had set and torn down or moved, and then new homes were built there on those locations. I know of several.
Yeah. So if you know where the old, where the building's at, it'll be good to know where that is too, sometime we'll chat about that. So, need your approval, Jeff, the board's approval, and we'll move right along with you.
I move to approve.
I have a motion by Santos,
Second.
second by Doug. Any further discussion?
Just appreciate your work, Bill, on that.
Sure.
All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the same. Motion carries. Item number 8 is items for the county engineer Keith White. 8A is discussion of possible action to approve various utility permits.
I'll get here without falling out. Good morning.
Good morning, Keith.
We have one utility permit this morning from Interstate Power and Light of Muscatine, Iowa. I mentioned a couple weeks ago when we approved one for them that there would be another. This is the second one down on G28 from Burlington Road up the hill towards Seven Springs to relocate a gas main out of our project's way, the 2-inch gas main, and abandon the old one that is in the way. So that's the purpose of that one. That's the only one we have.
Move to approve.
Second.
I have a motion by Nathan, a second by Santos.
Yes.
Any further discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the same. Motion carries. Projects update, Keith?
Projects update, the 120th bridge, which he mentioned, which was a historic structure, and we, Secretary Roads paid a fee towards this study. They're on another 4 today, so construction continues on that bridge replacement. The ones we let here several weeks ago, we're still waiting on contract documents from respective contractors there, so nothing happening there right now. No pre-construction meetings on those, so we haven't approved contract documents yet. G28 project, as you mentioned, was thinking I mentioned before, but perhaps not. The pre-construction meeting, they intended to begin work in early March. That work's gonna consist of dropping trees before the bats decide to move in, because the bats read the calendar, you know, so they know when to move in. So that's the only thing that's likely going to happen in March. Same with the relocating the deer crossing signs, because the deer do read that too. Anyway,
It's full of them today.
that's all that's likely to happen in March. The contractor, PCI, plans to start grading in the neighborhood of the late start date, which is April 6th. So that's when work will probably start. The subcontractor Hire Construction, which has the paving, they intend to pave from west to east, which I know I've mentioned that before.
Yep.
So they wouldn't be hauling over the road all the time. We like that idea. Can't tell you when they start. They have other jobs. But the timeline laid out with the contractor is from March through November, following the stages from west to east. So anybody's guess when they'll get near Mr. Hahn's location, but the road, if they follow the stages, it's only down one piece at a time. So anybody, I don't see anybody here that lives out there, but you're either gonna be able to go west or you're gonna be able to go east. You might have to go around.
They'll still have access off of Burlington Road to go up Funk's Hill, won't they?
It depends on where they're at in the stages. Let's say they were down by Lutheran Homes, then you're gonna have to go over to, if you wanna follow pavement, you're gonna have to go over to High Prairie on 22 and go south, come back. If they aren't up there yet, then you go east on G28 to the site.
Well, I was just thinking his wedding, for the people to get to his property, they'd probably be able to go up Funk's Hill off of Burlington Road. In one direction.
That would be one possibility. Of course, they're gonna have to go clear south on 61 to get to Burlington Road. It's just too early to tell when they're, I'm gonna say, ask me in July if they might be there in August. Too early to say.
Who's doing this? Hire, did you say?
Hire is the primary subcontractor. They're doing the paving.
Okay.
PCI is
PCI is
the
the prime.
is the prime contract.
But they're sitting right there at the absolute tiniest amount of the project allowed.
And when you say they're doing from east to west, or
From west to east.
west to east, I'm sorry, my bad. Are we repaving and redoing the whole road, or are we doing one side and one
Whole
side?
road.
Okay,
Whole road, so sections at a time will be down. Whole road.
is that a normal practice that we do
That
for
is
that?
absolutely a normal practice, yes.
And property owners are given alternate means of access during that problem. You're not gonna have the general public going through there, but.
Right.
Okay,
It's up to the contractor to work that out, but that is a common one, but yeah, all that we've done.
We did that big paving project on Taylor.
Yep.
It was exactly the same way.
It's the most efficient way.
Yeah. They get those big, they're wide pavers and they're just rolling and there will always be a point where the local property owner is gonna have a little bit of a challenge to get in and out, but hopefully that it's a short-term pain and the property owners and the contractor work well together on that.
okay,
Right, but it's
good.
a big undertaking.
Yeah.
That's all I had. Any questions?
Anything else for Keith today?
So Mr. Hahn wants, stay in touch with our office, and we can tell him as best we know. As you know, I often report to you what I know at 10 o'clock on Monday morning, and by noon it's changed, because the contractor's changed his plans, or he's changing it as I speak, so that's the world of construction.
Yeah, and weather and just get behind on one job and another job, it just all
We were
gets messed up.
told PCI is probably not gonna be here this week, a week of nice weather to drop their trees. But Wouldn't surprise me that changes and they're here.
That pondered a question. I've seen a bunch of trees dropped on F-70 up on that kind of, is that us doing that?
Yes,
Or
that's us.
that's you doing some basic ditch cleaning and road cleaning?
Well, yeah, trees in the right of way, and
Yeah.
they're really trying to pick ones that might fall on the road.
Well, it looked like it for me, the big split trunks that were hanging this way. And
Windstorms that
Yeah.
bring them down, yeah.
yeah, I was just curious. I was by there a couple times last week and I thought, well, you've done quite a lot of work there.
Yes,
When they drop those trees and cut them up, the wood that's in the ditch, is that available to the public
It is.
to pick up if they want it?
free for the taking.
Yeah, I saw there was a party on Sweetland Road, top of the hill, and they had a machine there and they were loading wood. And I saw where they stockpiled it, worked out great for them.
Good.
Works for everybody, then, right?
Yeah,
It does.
it does.
It's a
Yeah.
win-win.
It's a win-win. Okay.
Do we have,
Yeah.
Keith, do we have any roads closed due to, weight issues like when we had before last year in regards to concerns about, the frost
Not
and
at this point,
it's okay. So everything's going pretty good as far as,
no.
I know, but currently the way it is, we don't have any of them closed as we did
No,
last
at
year
the
during this
moment,
time.
We don't, it is getting to be that time.
As
of
weather's
year.
starting to come up, moisture, some of the frost is starting to now.
There's
So-
not a lot of frost.
I guess it might,
Like last year.
I don't wanna jinx anything, it might be unique in that, the frost just isn't, as Doug just said, is not in the ground like it's been, there's so much moisture in the ground, if the frost would be, it would be a nightmare out there, but we might just get lucky.
But the weather's supposed to be pretty good this week. I was just wondering, I didn't know how that was working out for you.
It's gonna be really hard to, we just saw last week at Bi-State, they did the weather service and everybody looked at the upper Mississippi and everything.
Yeah.
And we still, Iowa, this whole area are in, like 99th percentile soil saturation. So if it gets wet in the spring, it is going to be a mess. Because there is nowhere for the water to go. The soil has all the moisture in it can hold right now.
Yeah.
And so we just need some dry weather for a while. Let things dry out a little bit. So
Every day it thaws, the tile lines are running water.
Yeah.
Yeah,
There's a lot of water out there.
just wanted to know how the roads were going with that, so appreciate that,
At
Keith.
the moment, well, but
Good.
exactly as
Well,
Jeff said.
you gotta remember too, that historically, the month of March is the third snowiest month of the year. A lot of people don't realize that.
Just not this year.
2 days in.
Yeah, we've got 2 days in and Santos is predicting already. Okay, we'll hold you to that, Santos. Thank you, Keith.
Too bad.
All right, item number 9 is items with the Planning and Zoning Administrator, Eric Furnace. Item 9A is a discussion and possible action authorizing the chair to sign letters to Representative Gary Carlson, Reed HF 2512 and HF 244, and to Senator Mark Lofgren, Reed SF 2358 and SF 2264. Eric, you want to just brief everybody on that?
So those letters were included in your packet because there's a couple pieces of proposed legislation that are very concerning to the county zoning officials across Iowa. I'll try to just briefly summarize the two to hit the highlights of why we're concerned with this legislation and we think it should be slowed down and discussed. It's got a lot of momentum for what we understand and then came out of the committees pretty quickly. Senate File 2264 basically prohibits counties from requiring an application for farm exemptions. We believe this will create an adversarial relationship between zoning officials and persons living in the country, as the zoning officials will have to basically work back uphill once we see a project getting started. As it stands now in Muscatine County, we have a simple application where a farmer comes in, applies for an exemption, and provides a little bit of proof that they're an active income producing farm, and by state code then they are exempt from building zoning codes. There's a proposal to remove our ability to even require an application. We think this is a bad idea.
So somebody who doesn't farm but yet owns a bunch of acres can just build a huge farm potentially, or building, or, some sort of shed,
Right.
and be tax exempt, but not
Not
technically.
tax exempt, but exempt from building and zoning regulations.
Building exempt, okay.
So we would have no foreknowledge that if this is a farm building or not till we see a structure going up, and then the burden would fall on us to go out there, confront the person, and try to get information to establish whether or not it should be farm exempt. You can just about picture the adversarial atmosphere that we think this would create. And then the burden would be on us to prove that they're not farm exempt or shouldn't enjoy the farm exemption privileges that the state of Iowa currently provides for.
Wow.
We've worked for years in a cooperative effort, as many other counties have, to work with farm exemptions. I'm not arguing the validity of farm exemption at all. That's well entrenched in Iowa history. And this is just taking away one of the tools we have to work with farmers on the actual, how to apply the exemptions.
Yeah, and I think in the conversations I had with Eric and others, I said I would much prefer the state to work on the definition of a farm, what is actually considered a farm versus, you know, because as we've all seen, you have a lot of folks moving to the country, buying small parcels that aren't really farmers, and trying to use farm exemption as a method to do things they want to do, and that's just not, I don't think the farmers are interested in that, our ag producers are interested in that, we're not interested in that. And I think it's just good to everybody to slow down and say what's the real potential here, because we don't want the adversarial relationships, but we want to protect our valuable farmland, our farm ground. We don't want to, yeah.
So just a couple other parts of the bill I want to touch on real quickly. It also requires the Conservation Reserve Program, CRP, be considered farm exempt activity, just like active crop production right now. We don't view CRP alone as income producing active agriculture. Now, if you have CRP in conjunction with raising corn and soybeans, that's fine, you're still a farm. So that's just something that's in this bill, but that I don't completely agree with necessarily, because I think it kind of starts to go around the intent of the original farm exemption as well. Because you could buy 20 acres and have never farmed in your life, and you enroll it in CRP and claim that you're a farmer.
This isn't the big issue that we're having, we don't have as big an issue with that up here, but we have, I know some of our friends in the southern counties, a lot of people are buying up large tracts of timber and other things, putting them into set aside or other programs, and then doing whatever they, I'm a farm exempt, they're really your hunt clubs, and there should be a whole different set of rules, and you're not really a farmer. If you're a farmer, that's great, but if you're not, we need to have a little bit different process, because it hurts the farmers too, because we don't get necessarily the tax revenue that we need to take care of our roads and everything else, so I think it's good to slow down and think about it.
Additionally, they tacked in a provision that requires counties to go through the exact same process to make even the minorest amendment to your comprehensive land use plan. You would have to go through the same process as if you were adopting your first comprehensive plan, which is very, very significant. You have to notify counties or cities within your county, your local COG. This particular one I don't have as much of a problem with, because I've learned the reasons. One of the reasons they're trying to make it harder for counties to amend their comp plans is because there are certain more urban counties that have taken more of an anti-agricultural slant, and even the minorest change in a comprehensive land use plan can be very anti-agricultural. So this really, it makes the whole process more onerous, but it also adds that more layer of transparency and accountability to those elected officials who are trying to make anti-agricultural land use policy changes. So that one, I don't think if that was the only part of this bill, I wouldn't be asking you to oppose it. It makes the process a little more complicated, but there's some positives to it as well. So this bill also requires that all members of a board of adjustment reside in the unincorporated areas of the county. Currently, the law states that the majority of members need to reside in the unincorporated areas. Again, I think this is a reaction to some counties trying to stack their board of adjustments with anti-agricultural volunteers, board members. We believe at the County Zoning Officials Organization that this is something that's best left to the counties to decide. You're the ones that have the difficulties finding enough volunteers as it is to fill these boards. And if we end up with a member occasionally from Wilton or West Liberty or Nichols, we've not found that to be a problem at all. And so it would make life really difficult if we had to beg for volunteers, which we do routinely. We're doing it now.
And given the prevalence of subdivisions outside the city limits, there's certainly plenty of non-agricultural types in unincorporated areas.
And that's a great point, really. This allows us to add a minority voice, if you will, to these boards, someone that comes from an incorporated town. There's nothing wrong with that, so I think that's just bad legislation as well. So, moving to Senate File 2358, this extends farm exempt privileges to, quote, agricultural experiences. This is an attempt to allow people to enjoy farm exempt privileges if you're, I don't know, you've got a pumpkin patch and you do tours or some sort of agritourism, which I think is an exciting, potential for Iowa. But there's a lot of things that we have to consider when you're going beyond just farming.
Yeah.
Parking, road maintenance, dust control, public health, sanitation, egress, and safety codes of the buildings. With this proposal, if someone owned a farm and wanted to build a detached building and sell cheese curds and whatever, wine, and had an educational poster, that whole building would potentially be exempt from all the things that we look at. We allow those types of things, currently by special use permit. There are certain things that we think are good out in the ag area, but we get to look at the site and determine the impacts on our roads and our environmental health and make sure there's certain safety aspects in the building and the site. This would take our right to do that away and basically just make it all farm exempt when it's not at all agriculture. So, House File 2512 and 2477 are essentially companion bills. Same proposals, our same issues and objections. So that's why I provided you with a draft letter, at least send to our representative and senator to say, hey, let's not support this. I'd be willing to meet with any of them, and our lobby does try to come up with some compromises here. Again, I think indications are it's some knee-jerk reaction legislation to, I believe, and I don't want to put down Johnson County, but some things that have happened in Johnson County that have had some anti-agricultural slants, and this is the result of the unwillingness to work with the farm bureaus and the agricultural folks. This goes a little bit too far, I think.
Come up with some good common sense legislation.
Seems
It's
to be a
funny
source of
because
order.
I was at a wedding, and not in this county, this summer in Iowa, and pretty obvious somebody used a farm exemption to do one of these type of activities. I wouldn't even sit in the hall because I looked around at how it was structured and done and said, I am not comfortable being in this place. It was not built to any kind of a building code, and you have a large number of people. I don't think people understand when you get that much live load on structure, what kind of risks you're taking with people's lives. And it's one thing, if it's designed for livestock or things like that, when you're talking people, it's pretty important that you do it right. So I think it's probably time for us to get, wake up a little bit and look at this, because.
Again, I want to stress there, Beth, our objections to this do not jeopardize the actual farm exempt laws as I believe Iowa intended. I have no intention of trying to make farm exemptions harder, or deny them where it's an actual farm. Because I think this is occasionally a hot button topic. This though would put us in an adversarial, position with most of the time people are not farmers that are just trying to claim the exemption that I believe the state reserved for true farmers. So.
What is the minimum acreage that we have set for a farm?
So currently, we do not have one. The courts have not allowed, the courts have ruled that you cannot just use acreage alone to qualify as a farm. So we look at what is the whole use of the property. It must be primarily adapted by area and reason of nature for active income producing farming. So it's conceivable that if you just have 20 acres, but 19 of it is soybeans, that you are farm exempt. Because the vast majority of that acreage is primarily adapted for agriculture. And so if that person wanted to put a grain bin on that 20 acres, they should be entitled to a farm exemption for that grain bin. It's a farm building, and that property is primarily farm. So we use an approach that just looks at the primary use of the property regardless of size. Now, if someone has a house, 15 acres of timber, and 1 acre sweet corn patch that they sell a little bit, I'm not likely to approve that as primarily agricultural, you know, or for chickens type thing, so.
So is that something that you said that the state sets, but we can't set?
Right now, the state does allow each county to define a farm. The code says that no zoning or building regulations may apply to farms or land primarily adapted by area and use, but it allows each county to define farm. And I think that would be one of the areas. Personally, I'd like to see a state definition. I know there's some other counties that would object, but I think it would make things a lot easier.
I think it's what you just mentioned earlier too, in regards to kind of identifying that.
Do more work to define.
Well, because if we do get this passed, and how do we then, you know, what do we do potentially after that? Hopefully, if it doesn't pass, but if it does, what actions would we end up being able to take to kind of help in that step bit?
That's why I'm here. I don't typically bring this strong of an objection to you folks when there's proposed legislation. I can't even fathom what my job would look like.
If you're working backwards in a sense,
you know.
yeah.
Working back uphill, it's just gonna be.
Well, you just put us in an adversarial relationship with the landowners, and that's not where we wanna be. We wanna work with them and try to help them meet their objectives, you know, that's, just do it in a way that doesn't jeopardize public safety or their safety.
We have a long history of a cooperative effort in critiquing farm applications. I think in my career, we've had maybe 2 actual appeals to the Board of Adjustment when the zoning administrator denies a farm exemption.
Yeah.
So I don't believe here in Muscatine County we have a problem with denying farm exemptions.
Well, and I think even our, you know, I would say in cases I've been seeing, that I think our zoning boards have been, you know, sometimes there are other mechanisms to get those things that they want accomplished approved too, rather than just the farm exemption. And we're not talking an onerous cost issue on the process. So it's really just, I think it's, you know, I've been pretty happy with how it's worked here. We haven't, like Eric said, we haven't had a lot of issues, and I don't know why. But sometimes you don't need to break something that's not, and fix something that's not broken.
I can't see the farm community being happy about someone who's not farming exemption.
Right, yeah, I don't think true farmers are interested in seeing that.
Yeah.
It's not the intent of farm exemption. The farm exemption was intended for farming operations, period.
The good Lord save us from well-meaning politicians.
Thank you, Eric.
Okay, so.
Do we need any action? You're the one signing
We're
it.
looking for an action.
I move to approve to.
Second.
Okay, so I have a motion by Santos and a second by Nathan. Any further discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the same? Motion carries.
Thank you, Eric.
Anything else, Eric, today?
I believe so.
Okay. Thank you very much. Okay, item number 10. Discussion of possible action approving and authorizing the chair to execute a CenturyLink Total Advantage Express Agreement for the PRI circuit for community services with Information Services Director Bill Riley. Morning, Bill.
Good morning.
That's a mouthful.
This is actually something that was signed last fall, but it was signed in the wrong location. So CenturyLink sent it back, but at that time,
So Nathan got on the wrong line, is that what you're saying, or was it?
I'm not pointing fingers.
Must have been.
So, but essentially, we've had about 3 CenturyLink reps since then, a couple of them temporary. So it has taken several months for us to get a copy of it to resubmit for you to sign again. So that's where we are. It'll save about 45 months per year, or $45 per month, or $540 a year in the cost up there. So, and we have been going through and reducing costs on several of our lines. We found some that we were still being charged some taxes on that we shouldn't have been. So we've been working to reduce some of these costs. And anything that's out of contract, we're working on getting them back under contract.
Bill, what does PRI circuit mean?
It's just your phone line basically that goes into a phone system and allows you to have, I think it's 24 channels, but there are only 23 that are usable. And so they have roughly, I believe, 10 or 11 phone lines up there. And they're right at that break-even point where it may have been just as cost effective for them to stay on what's called POTS lines as opposed to the PRI circuit. So basically think digital versus analog.
I thought we were on that VoIP system for them.
But that's us, that's in this building.
Oh,
So the other offices or the other buildings such as the jail, sheriff's office, community services, they're all on, either analog or a digital line. So,
when we had DHS, I'm kind of going off your subject here, but when we had DHS in here doing the discussion in regards to budget in their building, one of their high numbers was phone services, correct? I think in review of that, again, going back off that. I know, but I'm wondering, is that something that could be future-wise, maybe budgeted for the future? Is that something, Bill?
they're actually sharing our phone system.
I know, and
But
that's
they
why,
have their own connections coming into it
okay.
compared to ours. So I'm assuming that they have their own PRI circuit coming into it. I don't remember from when we set that up about 3 years ago. And we have a PRI circuit, so it's called a multi-tenant situation. So I don't know if there's a way that we could split out a PRI.
So I guess I'm not making myself clear. I'm not trying to ask for a PRI circuit to be split. I'm trying to say, is there a way that they could be moved over to a voice over internet type service provider like we are here at DHS/Community Services?
They possibly could, but it might be one or the other, or they could each be on their own SIP circuit or VoIP circuit. But that would be something CenturyLink would have to be able to define for us. I don't know how we could split that out within the phone system.
And again,
DHS is looking to purchase a new phone system.
Right.
okay.
Which, my last communication with them was the system was purchased in 2016, why are we looking for a new one? And I haven't heard anything back yet, so.
Okay. I just don't know if there's any cost savings for that future-wise,
I
or,
can ask about that,
or
and I can
capitalizing
find out.
that in 2021 or 22, depending on how we're seeing
Right.
costs.
Well, it seems kind of strange to me that we would have, I mean, these are all basically digital computer systems.
Right.
And why would we have multiple systems, even though we're two different agencies? I get the funding sources, but it seems kind of crazy to have two different assets and two different pipes into those assets when you can probably share that capacity and manage that capacity and then just do it on a per end user basis. You know, it costs so much. you
Right.
know, I mean,
And
it's,
I will look into that.
It's
see
a
what options
virtual
we
world
would have,
today,
not
yeah.
really,
Yeah.
and that might be something where we could do something such as a VoIP or SIP system into that, and then just by extension or whatever, have the phone system then split out what line goes to what.
Yeah.
are we happy with the VoIP that we have here?
Compared to what we were having before, I'd say yes, but that
So we
was,
haven't had any reliability or call quality issues or anything like that?
not that I'm aware of, compared to what we had when, PRI circuit was terminated basically across the alley from the building, where they were getting slush and stuff building up in there that would take us down at times for up to a day or more.
Yeah.
So, this has worked out much better.
Well, I'll move to approve.
A motion by Santos,
Second.
second by Nathan. Any further discussion? All in
Just-
favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye. Just if you could follow up on that, Bill.
Opposed?
Yeah, no, and
Thank you.
I'll reach out to both, Lucas Communications, which is the provider of our current phone system, as well as CenturyLink to see what we would be able to do. Because I know that there is fiber in that area, so the biggest cost to us hopefully would only be getting it from whatever point into the building.
And then all of our systems would be over the same type.
No, this would only be for that particular location. We can do direct dialing between the two buildings right now for community services and our administration building. But our other phone systems are old enough that they cannot have that ability with the system here. And so I will work with departments as their systems come up for replacement, so that we can hopefully get them all tied together. But without us all kind of being on the same schedule, we still might fall out of the compatibility range.
Okay.
The only other thing I had to mention to you was on February 2nd. That night we had some power issues down here, and that caused some interruptions at the jail for most of the night that night. We are looking to see what we can do about this to help prevent it in the future, possibly moving our servers from downstairs in this building over to the jail where they'll be on a generator. And where necessary, moving some connections over there as well.
Our servers, we don't have UPS and generator backup.
We had UPS, and the UPS kept us up for about 3.5 hours.
Yeah.
But the power outage lasted longer than that. And it was at the same time that we had the power issue with the attorney's building. And so we weren't back online until about 6:30 in the morning, and the initial problem started, if I remember correctly, about 10:30 in the evening. And then we finally shut down about 2 o'clock.
This seems like an area that maybe we need to look at our long-term strategy around hardening some of our communication systems and their shells, so to speak. Because I don't know, you know, I think probably not a tragedy if the administration center, you know, I gotta think about which departments are really, we need key access, need to have.
Right, and I am having some discussions with Nancy about some of this stuff.
Okay.
So that we need to figure out, okay, what does become the crucial pieces? You know, with the UPS that we currently have in the server room downstairs, if we were to locate the primary bulk of our servers over to the jail, that appliance down there should be able to keep us up and going for quite some time, because switches and so forth don't take anywhere near the power that servers and SANs do.
Yeah.
So,
But I just think, is the jail the appropriate place for it? I don't know.
Well, they're currently the one that has the generator.
Yeah.
And we're tied to them through existing fiber. We have conduit between us. That's
And
private.
what kind of fire protection, is the jail all water-based?
I don't know about their video room, because that's the room that we would be looking at, which these are all things that we're going to want to look at as we.
Because typically, you're gonna wanna put that in a halon environment, so you don't destroy the electronics if you have any kind of an issue. And those are not inexpensive systems to operate or have, but you have key infrastructure you have to protect.
Right. And these are some things that, over the past years, we haven't necessarily thought about as much, but we're getting more and more
Yeah,
integrated.
because we should be thinking about our dispatch center and all of this isn't one big, I'm sure the city, we kind of share the public safety building with the city, with the dispatch center. And, that's a building you just can't have outages in for those communications facilities, okay?
Bill, have we found out what then caused our concerns with the outage when we had that over at the
I was
attorney's?
never able to get a definitive answer as to what happened. So, I know that MPNW basically fixed whatever happened in the alley, but do you know any more than that, Sherry?
Well, what we were told is there were some wires that attached and it shot 8,000 volts through the county attorney's building.
And then we just had this recent one
No, this was the same one.
on February 2nd.
Where it
February
caused
2nd.
some
This
trouble with
happened
the systems,
That
HVAC
same
too,
night.
right?
Okay.
I talked to MPNW the next morning because we weren't back online, and they said that they didn't know from the notes, but they thought that something had happened down around Second and Sycamore. And that had taken down the power initially, and then they didn't even mention anything about the community, or attorney's office. So I wasn't aware of that until I came in, because things did start coming up at about 6:30 in the morning. I started getting emails about that.
I wonder if there's value, maybe evaluating a backup server then / generator for here versus us sending it over there into that service, because that to me would be more valuable for us versus not having to move all of the hardware servers over there
Right.
and the cost associated with that.
And this is some things that Nancy and I have kind of discussed, and at some point, it's all gonna come down to dollars,
Yeah.
because generators aren't cheap.
No, but if you think about the long term of both of those and what, existing infrastructure moves, costs for those backups, looking at those types of, systems and,
Well, I think
looking at those
kinda
generators are not small.
That kind of solidifies as this board over the last 10 years has tried to consolidate some of our facilities back to more of a campus environment. Because the thing nobody thinks about are all these little ancillary systems that provide services to the public that we need to make sure that we have a robust act, because in bad times or when we probably need to be more more easily communicated with than in good times, quite frankly.
We really have quite a bit of infrastructure in here that all the offices utilize in some way, shape, or form.
Right, yeah.
So we will look at that. One of the things that we did realize when this happened was that the attorney's office is on its own power system. So I don't know if that's something that we want to look at some point, if it's possible to bring them into this, especially if we're looking at a generator.
When you say power, you're saying facility power?
Yes, that building is completely
And
separate.
it doesn't
from
bother
this.
me as much as your critical infrastructure.
I'm thinking
like
what's,
your
yeah.
Technology, I mean.
No, and I'm just saying that that is something.
You start tying buildings together from essential services, then you reduce flexibility with that asset long-term. That's a discussion point, I think.
Yeah, I think it's a good start, Bill, that you're looking at for us to look at that and then maybe get some, budget discussions in regards to long-term state, hey, if we move over here, this is what it'll be. My concern, just thinking out loud in a sense, if we were to move over there, is just if there was ever any future changes or upgrades in the existing infrastructure at the jail, well, we can't do any more because we're housing all of your stuff now. Those concerns that have to do, adding more cooling, halon systems if they have already for that type of, software.
When we had the architects and we did our kind of review of all of our properties and kind of created our plan, so to speak, our capital plan, did we dive to that level? Did we look at those kind of things? Or was that more of it was more kind of building condition 88, right? Not really
Maintenance, condition,
maintenance and,
yes.
we didn't really
We
talk
did
about
not.
storm shelters and hardened environments for some of our technology. Okay.
Yeah, it would be interesting to see where those powers are even being fed
That'll be
into.
phase 2 of
Yeah.
our building look, so that we make sure that we have the right assets in place and so our people can work and do the work they need to, okay.
Okay. Thank you, Bill. No, a lot of good information.
Okay.
Okay, item number 11 is discussion of possible action to approve the minutes of the February 24th, 2020 regular meeting. A motion by Scott,
Second?
second by Nathan. Any discussion? All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, the same. Motion carries. Item 12 is correspondence. Santos, did you have any?
I had a number of emails and a few phone calls in regards to the Special Olympics funding. And then, I'd had a discussion with the city council member on Friday 28th over the same potential, Special Olympics item, and, said that there may be discussion in the future and help or future assistance that they may look at assisting the Special Olympics.
The
as
city
well.
doesn't fund them now, does it?
Correct. Just a discussion piece, and they said they may end up putting that as a discussion piece in our joint future meeting with the county and the city. So that's all I have for correspondence.
I had also several contacts from folks interested in the Special Olympics.
Okay. I had a number of those. I also attended with Mr. Nathan here. We attended Farm Bureau,
Oh, that's right, yeah.
I don't know what they call it, their executive committee meeting, and typically they ask about upcoming things in the budget, clarification on projects and schedules. They're very concerned about mental health funding and that. So we had just a general conversation with them. On the 27th, I was out in Des Moines, I met with the director of DHS and a couple of other DHS folks to discuss our status in any region in the mental health process. On 2/27, I also attended the mental health, the community forum that was put on here down at Musser Library. It was awesome. Probably 60 people, maybe, Christie? 60 or 70 community members. I thought whoever put the presentation, it was a collaboration between public health, I think it was community providers. I think they all got together, put a presentation together. It was outstanding, very informative. We learned a lot. I think it was a great session. I encourage us to do more and more of that, as I think there are a lot of people. It's really hard to get the word out. I mean, we see it every day, but it was amazing to me that there were members of the community that were kind of struggling and had some issues, and they were unaware of the avenues to get to, and that in this day and age is unacceptable. We have to do a better job of getting that information out. And I applaud that team for doing that. I know it's a lot of work for those kind of events, and sometimes they can be tough, but really good. And then on the 28th, I also had two separate meetings with Levy Stakeholders Group on that project, and kind of getting everybody up to speed on what's happening, where we are, and what's going on. I think, Nancy, we've made some progress maybe on a joint meeting.
Yeah, I think we've determined a date of March 24th.
And again, I think this is a group that if the public has not paid much attention, this is work that's gone on since 2013 maybe, when the city of Muscatine commissioned a study they called the inundation study, but I think everybody in the community should be kind of in the county should be keeping themselves up on what's going on down there with our levee. You know, we have about approximately 30,000 acres protected in this county by the levee, and we have probably thousands of jobs in that same area, and it could have a lot of infrastructure down there. So it's very important that people be aware of what's going on and all the issues and all that. So I had a couple meetings on that this last week. That was it for me.
I had just numerous contacts in regard to Special Olympics, that's all I had.
I had emails concerning the Special Olympics. I also had a call from Dave Hahn, who spoke today about the greater shed at Top Hill. That was it on correspondence.
What about committee reports, Doug? Did you have any committees last meeting?
February 19th at noon was Wilton Development. February 25th at 6 o'clock was the conference board. And February 27th was compensation board at 3:30.
I had on Monday the 24th, I had the Conservation Board, Tuesday the 25th, Conference Board, and on Thursday the 27th, I sat in on the Compensation Board.
Very good. On the 24th, I had the Eastern Iowa Mental Health Region. Say those meetings are interesting would be an understatement. On the 25th, I attended the Conference Board. On the 26th, I had the Bi-State Regional Commission. And then on Saturday, the 29th, we participate in part of the Regional Workforce Investment Board, and I think I've mentioned to this group that we have to reorganize those because we're not in compliance with federal law. And so we're doing a lot of work. I met Saturday with the representative from Scott County because he is unable to make most of the meetings that have happened because they're kind of during the day, and in his role, he has limited ability to do that. So he and I went through that. But I'm gonna be probably putting on the agenda in the next week, an authorization, try to give our rep an authorization to sign a couple of documents that we need to get done to get this. One document will be just a letter of intent. So we currently operate in what's called Region 9. That's Clinton, Scott, Jackson, and Muscatine counties for workforce development. Now this is, in the workforce world, there are 4 titles of assistance that people get, Title 1, 2, 3, 4. They're pretty creative. We're responsible as a board for all Title I funding. And in the past, Eastern Iowa Community College has done all of that in our region. It's not true in all Title I providing areas in the state. The bottom line is that by doing that, there's multiple functions, and they must be competitively procured. And the Eastern Iowa Community College has always just done them all. And so we have to go through that process. There's one of the key functions is what's called a fiscal agent, which pays the bills, approves contracts, does all that stuff. You cannot be a Title I service provider and a fiscal agent. We don't have those in our region, those costs separated. So a little bit of a challenge of our workforce board, we're kind of behind the 8 ball on timing on this. This is the one where we put the opposition letter and all of that. So Region 16, which is Louisa, the 4 counties straight down the river, Louisa, Burlington, yeah, not Washington, Henry, Lee, Louisa, and Des Moines, okay? Those 4 counties, they actually have independent board staff that they've always operated with, and they're gonna be compliant here in the next month probably. And so when we originally, you remember they looked at forcing some people together to regionalize, because the bottom line is we're allowed to spend 10% of these dollars that flow into the region for administration, period. That has to get us the fiscal agent, board services. Well, we get about $1.1 million in Region 9 today. So 10% of 1.1 million is about $100,000. Other regions say that the fiscal agent will cost you about 6%. So, and then we have to hire board staff and a Title I director. We're not gonna get that done for $30,000, $40,000. So it's inevitable that we have to consolidate these resources. Those 4 counties have about another million, too, as well. So total will be 2 point some. So with a couple $100,000, we think we can get this done. So that's why the CEOs, which are the chief elected officials from each of the counties in there, we've kind of want to have this agreement that we think it makes more sense to get ourselves compliant. Our plan in Region 9 is because we are so far behind because we have our boards, we don't have board staff and we don't have funding for board staff, that we're gonna use all the documents created out of Region 16 and just parallel them. So I have a shared liability agreement for CEOs that I'll bring to this board and ask us to adopt it for a 4 county and then and approve to sign for an 8 county when we go to the merger process. But there's dollars and they're funding out end of April for our youth services in the region, and if we don't have a fiscal agent assigned by then, we don't get the dollars. So we gotta get it done. We're moving forward, trying to get that done. So that's it for me.
In terms of committees, had the conference board last Tuesday.
On Tuesday the 25th, I had solid waste. The commission went over the budget that the city has. We discussed a little bit about how they're looking at potentially discussions of opening up another area for the landfill for future use in the next 13 years. Another cell. Discussions of how long that will give us how many more years beyond that. I also had a discussion in regards to compost waste that I had gotten a few calls from residents that are living just right outside of the city. And right now, currently, the city has moved to a point where they're no longer allowing county residents to go drop off landfill other than a per charge that they have. Something varies depending on cost per load and whatnot. They just have implemented this in place over the last couple of months, and one of the requests that I had to them is, right now, a city resident can basically get a sticker. They can go in and just have unlimited amount of use. Somebody that may just live right outside the bypass, can't do that. So without a fee per charge. So I said, is there any potential of maybe either having, county residents are interested in potentially still dropping that off here? They cut down one type of tree. Is there like a punch card, or is there something you can, utilize that they pay a yearly fee and they have now their members? Maybe if they're within, 15-mile, 20-mile radius of the landfill. I said, is there an option of that nature? And so, very interesting. He seemed The group was very open to that. The other piece that we discussed in regards to was not all the areas like West Liberty, Atalissa, are dropping off their trash in the landfill here locally. Some are taking it to the Quad Cities, some are not bringing it here in Muscatine. So I'm having a discussion with some of those representatives from those areas, cost for that specifically, even like Wilton does it by mass per, I should say, by square cubic yard versus by actual tonnage. So is there any ways that we could consolidate and maybe help that landfill? So we'll kind of move over and see how future comes up on our next meeting. Had Bi-State on the 26th. Really good presentation. We had a presentation in regards from the meteorologist from the Weather Service and the future of what groundwater looks at. You mentioned earlier of how we're at 99% saturation. One of the key indicators for her as she presented was the rain that we could possibly get in March will either indicate right now at the rate that they're looking at is a 94% chance that we will see flooding.
Major flooding.
But it's at what level we'll be seeing just because of the saturation. And like you mentioned earlier, Doug, the tiles are still draining as regards to what we know and how we see that. So I can't remember, we asked for the PowerPoint, but I think it was March 13th was a key date for them to kind of start seeing things turn one way or go the other way. So it is, I feel like a 50-50 sometimes when they share some of that. They also did a presentation in regards to economic and summary of their demographics, populations in the Bi-State region, which is a really interesting read that I had, and how we're seeing the growth of diversity in the Bi-State area and unemployment continuing to go down. So really good meeting on that. On the 27th, Thursday, I had a We Lead More meeting in the morning. Budget was approved. We passed that and continue to move forward with their economic development. And then on Thursday in the evening, I had a comp board meeting as well too. And that's all I have for meetings.
Okay. A lot of stuff last week.
Yes, we were busy.
Item number 14 is receive information from county employees. Anyone from the county? Christie, how about giving us a coronavirus or what is CV? I'm supposed to use something else. I apologize. It's CVD 19 or something?
Yes.
Okay. Could you give us an update on what's happening, where we are?
So the team's coming up here.
Okay, beautiful.
Christy Roby Williams, Director of Public Health for Muscatine County, and with me is Holly Barrett, our Clinical Manager, who also oversees our public health emergency preparedness and communicable disease surveillance and investigations, and Brian Wright, Board of Health, and serves as our county's emergency manager. So we are working closely, as you know, with the Iowa Department of Public Health, who is working closely with the CDC, who is working closely with the World Health Organization. Our one true source who we go to for our fact finding and information is the Iowa Department of Public Health, and we would continuously recommend the community go there for your facts and to know how to prepare as individuals and as a community.
So Christy, before you go too far, how do they get there? Is that
So they go to, have to have internet access.
Okay.
So if you have a device but you don't have internet access, you certainly can go to the library and take a laptop with you or a phone if you have. And it is idph.iowa.gov. If you go there, I don't have to tell you where to click, because as soon as you get on that page, you'll see coronavirus updates that pops up at the top, and you just click on that link. Great question. They have all of the facts there on number of surveillances, preparing, travel considerations, general prevention, and then additional resources for businesses, schools, health cares, long-term care facilities, and for the general public. So that's your one true source. Go there for the facts. I want to empathize with our community. I have my own family. I was born and raised in Muscatine County. Things like this do feel scary. It's called a novel virus for a reason. It's new. It's unknown. But there are scientists on top of identifying a vaccine
working diligently from across the world to bring some more understanding to this. So all we can do is fill our minds with the facts and not the fear. So that's what I ask of the community. We did release last week publications to all of our newspapers that we know go out Muscatine County wide. That's Discover Muscatine, Voice of Muscatine, and the Journal. We want to encourage folks in that, just letting them know we're still working with Iowa Department of Public Health, our state, local, state, and federal partners, but that there are ways how you can prevent and spread all viruses, including influenza, that has taken many lives throughout the United States, is cover your coughs and sneezes with a tissue or your upper arm or elbow. So when I see people or sneeze into their hands, that's not an effective way of covering. That is going to spread a virus immediately. Clean your hands frequently with soap and water, 20 seconds. I jokingly have told my team, I remember when my kids were little and I'd sing the ABCs to them. Do that. Be intentional, conscious awareness, make that practice happen. We are so busy and rushing from place to place that we forget that one little step, and that can definitely help reduce the spread of viruses and bacteria. The other would be as you're going in and out in public places, if you can use a tissue when you're grabbing a door handle, a paper towel, a sleeve, anything like that, that is beneficial to your health and the health of others. And if you are ill, stay home. Please do not continue spreading the infection of viruses and bacteria. We have a lot of people still being diagnosed with influenza in our county, and there are a lot of folks that have compromised immune systems in our county. That puts them at a very high risk for hospitalization and further health condition complications. So we just want to ensure that the public is aware of that. Yesterday, or last week, not yesterday, we received correspondence from the Iowa Department of Public Health, and Holly and I have been working closely in getting communications out. The Iowa Department of Public Health is offering webinars to businesses, hospital administrators, child cares, schools. What else am I leaving out?
The K through 12.
The K through 12.
Separate from the
Yeah.
preschools.
We have been in communication with all the chambers throughout the county, asking them to disseminate this information to all the businesses they're aware of. These webinars, again, are led by our doctors at the state, our epidemiologists. I highly encourage those folks that we've reached out to about those webinars to sit in on those, make that a priority, because they'll talk about preparedness, they'll give the facts, they'll share preparedness, and they'll offer a Q&A time so you can ask those questions. Anything else that you wanted to add? That was good. Any questions?
Go ahead, Doug.
I was just wondering the impact this will have on travel as the virus spreads. I have a friend from Australia who's planning to come in April for Band Aid, and they canceled all flights out of Australia.
Yes. So let me
57
pull up my
cases of
facts.
coronavirus there.
If I can see them. So, warning 3 level from the CDC. CDC recommends that travelers avoid all non-essential travels to China and South Korea. And alert 2, these designations are experiencing sustained community transmission of respiratory illness caused by the novel coronavirus, or COVID-19. And these are, the viruses can spread from person to person. These areas of non-essential travel that they're asking that you consider not going to would be Iran, Italy, and Japan. And watch level 1 does not recommend canceling or postponing travel to the following destinations. However, travelers should practice usual precautions, and that is Hong Kong.
Okay.
So I do know, there are folks that were just had travel plans to go to Italy, and, they're
canceling those. Contact your airlines, they're aware of these travel warnings, they are working with individuals, they are, giving them their money back, helping them reschedule. So again, go to the Iowa Department of Public Health or CDC for those travel recommendations if you have travels in your near future. Businesses are encouraged to create their own preparedness. If there's not required travel, don't send your folks. So just being mindful of that. We all need to think preparedness, not just emergency management and the public health department. We all are responsible for that. And what are you going to do, and think through some of those questions that were in the press release. Residents should prepare for the potential of COVID-19 in the same way they prepare for severe weather or other events that could disrupt your normal routine. So this is where we need that intentional awareness. This includes making a plan and discussing it with your family, your what-ifs. What would you do if you could not go to work or school because of an illness? What if your daycare provider was ill? How would you get groceries if you were ill? These are all questions to consider.
I just want to make one question. On your idph.gov, does that kind of help people in the public understand what COVID is 19 if somebody were to hypothetically get it? Because right now I think one of the fears is this, life-threatening sickness that in reality I don't believe it is that. It is more of I'm not going to really put into words, but I think it's some sort of a system that gets into you, creates a potential almost flu-like symptoms, but eventually you do get through it if you do not have a lot of respiratory issues and you're not having a lot of those. Is that something
You
to
are
that correct?
The signs and symptoms mimic that of influenza.
Okay.
Those that have compromised immune systems are more at risk. So we know there are two cases of mortality in the United States.
Okay.
One was a 50-year-old, a woman in her 50s and a woman in her 70s in a long-term care facility. Both had underlying health conditions that made them more vulnerable to the virus.
But if someone were to feel they have that, and then, or even if they do get it, you're quarantined, you try to stay home, your body will eventually get through it,
Correct.
and it's not some, disease that you're gonna get it's a goner type thing. And I think that's the message that I wanna make sure that we're clear that we're sending. If that IDPH is sharing that,
It is.
it helps us understand, so it's not this huge panic
Yes.
that, oh my gosh, somebody just sneezed over by me, I think I better go run home and I'm done. It's not that.
It's more likely influenza.
Okay. Well,
And also,
Yeah.
that would be a situation where you get home, wash your hands. Yes, that's where the fear lies, is because it's new and
Yeah.
it's unknown.
And I think that's really what it helps us to help make sure that we're communicating to the public, we're allowing them to understand that, and I appreciate the time that you're taking, Christy, and your team as far as sharing that with us, so. Is there anything else?
We had an interview on television with a woman who they quarantined because she showed positive.
Yeah.
And she said she didn't feel any signs of being ill.
Yeah.
Everybody's body is
So-
different in how it accepts and receives a virus and copes with it. So if you have a compromised immune system, if you have signs or symptoms, contact your primary care provider first.
Yeah.
Call their office. They're gonna ask screening questions. Our healthcare system is working diligently on preparedness as well. Our hospital, our clinics, and all clinics throughout Muscatine County, not just Unity Point. Everybody is working on strategies to screen individuals and to know what next steps are. If there are concerns based off of the screening, the Iowa Department of Public Health will assist with testing and screening. Those can be tested at our state hygienic lab, which is at University of Iowa, so nice and close to home for us. And then if there are any positive results, there's quarantine done, there's monitoring that's done by your local public health department in collaboration with the individuals.
Great.
Very good.
Thank you, Christy. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Anybody have anything else? Okay. Any other county employees have anything they need to care to share this morning? Okay, items with the administration office. Item number 15A is discussion of possible action regarding Muscatine County Compensation Board FY 19 and 20 salary recommendation for elected officials.
So there was a memo from the comp board in your packet.
Yeah.
The recommendation from the comp board to the board of supervisors is a 4% increase for all of the elected officials. And that would also affect the employees whose salaries are tied to the elected official salary. So that's the deputies and the auditor, recorder, and treasurer's office, the assistant county attorneys in Alan's office, and then the command staff at the jail.
And Nancy, would you just for my clarification, remind me of what the board's authority were on the comp? We can, I believe legislation changed in the last several years that you can, the board of supervisors can act on their own recommendation independent of the others. If there's any adjustment that they deem to make to the comp board's recommendations, it must be done across the board, is that correct?
For everyone except the board of supervisors, yeah, if you choose to make a reduction, it's done across the board, and you make a percentage reduction. So if you chose to, for instance, reduce the comp board's recommendations by 25%, that would drop all of the elected officials except yourself down to 3%.
Okay.
You can
Yeah.
do yours separately.
I mean, that was one of the challenges many years ago, was you couldn't act independently on the board, and the legislature allowed the supervisors to do that, so.
I also will tell you that this is slightly above what was included in the budget as I prepared the budget. The net effect of that is, if you accept the 4% for everybody, the budget, that's a budget shortfall of $16,535. That those departments would have to absorb, or we would need to do a budget amendment for after the beginning of the year,
Okay.
of the fiscal year.
Okay.
One thing that I felt was unique to this decision by the compensation board was, I've attended every one of these compensation board meetings ever since I've been on the board of supervisors, and in this particular case, there were different groups that asked anywhere from, if my memory serves me correct, from 3% to 4.5%, I believe. I believe that's
think so.
what they asked.
Somebody went 4 to 5.
Yeah.
Someone
Maybe
went 4 to
5.
5.
Yeah,
But
5.
My point being here that there was some variance in what was asked for, and the compensation board decided to run straight across the board. I don't believe I've ever seen that done quite like that, but I'm not saying it's wrong. I'm just bringing to light how the decision came to pass.
Yeah, and I think that the compensation board has done, they've been very consistent and thoughtful in the last number of years that I've witnessed them. That, I know there was a point where we probably didn't, the board and they didn't see eye to eye a lot, and we had a lot of changes, and they work really hard at doing the research and trying to listen to the elected officials.
Well, and they have three new board members this year, so there was some new perspective there as well. There was a good discussion.
Yeah.
Yeah, there was a lot of good questions. I think they were very thorough in their request for what they were wanting to do, and as well, I appreciate their time and their effort into reviewing that, so.
Well, this is on for discussion and possible action, so we've had a brief discussion. I would accept some motion, whatever.
I make a motion to approve as presented.
So I have a motion to approve as presented by Santos. Doug will second that. Okay, so we have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion?
I just note that for those out there wondering how our salaries kind of stack up for your elected officials, we rank 13th in population in the state, and the offices of attorney, auditor, recorder, sheriff, and treasurer all rank in salary between, it looks like, from 7 to 18, so they're right in line. Supervisors, we're actually 84th. So we're actually one of the least compensated supervisors. So it's always an easy target, but and for several years we'd taken 0 until we were told, I think we shouldn't or couldn't do that, so.
We were 86th before.
That's right. So we're moving up. We're all the way up to 84.
Well, the comp board was, yeah, pretty adamant that you, and it is true, you need to be able to, you need to get good committed officials, so. Okay, so I have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the same. Motion carries. All right, item B is discussion of possible action to approve resolution 03-02-2001, fixing a date for public hearings on general obligation county purpose loan agreements in amount not to exceed $2 million to finance improvements to county buildings. This was the funding, as you recall, from our budget deliberations for all the capital projects we have in our plans.
Is that the right resolution number?
Yes.
Okay.
It just needs to be a number instead of a dollar sign, but, yeah.
Oh, okay, that's what I was.
Oh, so it's, yeah.
Yeah, that's the dollar. I wasn't sure if I was reading that.
Good
right.
job.
Okay.
I did that to see if anybody would catch it. You
Yep.
will, Sandra.
Okay.
Okay.
My mind on my money, my money on my mind.
All right. I move to approve.
A motion by Santos, second by Scott.
It's a roll
This
call.
is a roll call vote. Any discussion? This is a roll call vote. Santos?
Aye.
Scott? Aye. Doug?
Aye.
I vote aye. Nathan?
Aye.
Motion carries. Item C, action to accept and approve the proposed FY 2021 Muscatine County budget for publication.
So you are no way approving the budget, you are simply approving what we publish, in anticipation of the public hearing on 3/16. After the public hearing, you have the ability to approve the budget as presented, or you can make reductions or changes as long as you don't exceed what is included here.
Yep. Okay, we're all clear on that?
So my question is if we were to hypothetically make an adjustment, as Doug was mentioning earlier, is that something that would have to then be cut from somebody else? Since we can't increase it, we can only,
As you recall, we set a budgeted amount, a total levy, a potential levy.
Yeah.
We would have to set within that. I mean, the reality is that in this budget, we have to do that regardless, because the funds that we're talking about, there's only really one place you can fund that out of, and that's the general basic fund. And as you recall, we are at the general basic fund cap, so that the board, should they choose to make changes, we will have to make decisions on how we're gonna implement those changes. That's just plain and simple. Yeah.
Okay.
Because you can argue, part of it was.
Discuss.
You can debate some of that, and we could do that maybe at in that budget process. Every fund that we fund things out of has a restriction to it of what you must. So for example, general assistance, it is for the poor and indigent, is that what I believe it says? You must prove, and that was kind of my question today about means testing, and I know people don't want to hear that. So if I'm gonna fund out of the general assistance fund for Special Olympics, they must means test all those funds. If they don't means test them, I can't do that.
Means test all.
Which means they have to be they have to be below the federal poverty level to receive money.
And that's where legally not allowed to do that?
That's what the fund says.
Yeah.
So those are discussions we can have after the public hearing, we'll need to have, as we kind of look at what our options are. And I think my comment would be, and I know, you don't have to read the tea leaves too much to understand the local control. If you see some of the budget, some of the bills going through, local control of funds is getting more and more restricted. So just like we saw with mental health in 2014, when it changed, when they started defining core plus services, they're gonna cap our ability to levy. They're also gonna say, this is all you're allowed to spend this money on, period. I don't say they're gonna say, this is all you can spend it on. They're gonna say, given this cap, you must provide these services, And if you have any left over, you can go ahead and do what you want. So that's a different way of looking at it.
And I wanna make sure it's clear when the notice of public hearing is published, it's published by service area or activity. And if you would decide to make a change and add money back into Special Olympics, you would have to take it away from another department that's in that same service area, which would be general assistance, veterans, public health. You couldn't take it from the sheriff's department, because that's a separate service area. Once we publish, you're limited to that service area 3 to move the money around there. And like I said, those are basically the departments that fall within that.
So where does Special Olympics fall if we were to right now? Because I thought it wasn't out of Fund 10, right?
No,
It was being,
it was funded out of general assistance. So if you leave it in general assistance, you would have to reduce some other line out of general assistance, or in service area 3, veterans, or the subsidy to the public health department.
But am I correct in understanding that if it is paid out of general assistance, that it does legally have to be means tested?
it has to meet the,
The purpose of the general assistance budget is to serve the indigent.
Correct, okay.
so we have to prove public purpose. Everything we do has to prove public purpose. We can't just levy money to do what we want.
For
so.
years, it was a mental health service.
But if that was the
Regionalization,
case,
it was
how did we
decided
do it
that
before?
It wasn't something that could be
We
funded.
probably shouldn't have.
That's what I'm wanting to get at.
So does that mean that Santos just asking, does that mean we probably shouldn't have been doing it that way without means testing?
Exactly what that means, yeah.
Got it. That's what I thought.
Okay, all right, so we're fixed, we did the date. Okay, so so we're at the, do we have we haven't got a motion, I don't have a motion yet.
I'll make a motion.
To approve, so I have a motion by Santos,
I'll second.
second by Scott. Any further discussion? All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the same. Motion carries. Item number D is action to accept payroll, or February 2020 payroll claims.
So moved.
I have a motion by Nathan, a second by Scott. Any further discussion? Seeing none. All in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed, the same. Motion carries. Anything else? Nancy, did you have anything for the board?
Nancy, can you verify, are we set then for March 24th for that meeting then with the city and the county?
Mr. Jenkins has not, absolutely confirmed with me yet, but
Okay.
that's tentatively what we're doing. I expect to hear from them.
And that would be, so tentatively, it looks like 3:24 in the evening.
It'd be
to
like
meet
7:30.
7:30 PM for the joint meeting.
And we would be having it where?
We have not discussed that yet.
Okay.
The mayor and I spoke at our meet, when we went to she sent something back, said, do you wanna do it in council chamber? And they were thinking the conference room down there, and that doesn't give the community a lot of opportunity to get there. I suggested to her we should look at that room 301 at the public library. That's a big room, we could get a lot of people in there, and I think this would be an event, I really think that a lot of Muscatine residents need to participate, or come here. And it'll really be,
That's a great idea.
I think that'd be good, and have Rich, ask Rich Dwyer, because he's kind of been the lead, and has most history, to present everybody that's been involved and everything that's been done to date. That's kind of the intent of this meeting, so everybody can understand the problem and the process. Okay?
And if for some reason we can't get that that room at the library, another option would be for us to have it out at conservation, out at the Discovery Learning Center. They have a pretty.
Yeah, that's a decent
They
sized
have
room
a
too.
decent sized room out there as
And they have
well.
good parking, that's what I like about the library
Yeah.
too. You have good parking, you have a good room. Perfect.
Either one of those.
Good idea, Nancy. Okay.
Well, just keep us updated. I didn't know that. I wanted to follow up on that.
Anything else?
No, that's all.
Seeing nothing else, the meeting is adjourned.